Hey guys, Jack is back. Today we're going to be building an app to store users and their books in a database, as well as make this information available in an API so that you can take what you learn from here and create some cool apps using React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, or whatever you want to use to consume the API. Let's get into it. Alright, so before we get into the code, let's quickly go over which technologies we're going to be using for this app. So we're going to be building an app that stores users and their books in a PostgresQL database. We're going to be using a package called GORM because it simplifies things and it makes it so that we don't have to mess around writing any raw SQL. We'll be storing all of the sensitive information in environment variables and loading them through our terminal. We will make all of the data available in an API and implement the ability to create, read, and delete data through the API. I will be using Postman to test out the API, but you can use whatever you want. Alright, so I'm assuming that you've already got Go installed if you're actually watching this video, but I will not assume that you've already got Postgres installed. Pause. At this point of the video, I'm assuming you're using a Unix-based terminal to execute all the commands that I'm about to show you. If you're still using Windows PowerShell or the command prompt, what are you doing? Do yourself a favor and click the link in the description to a video to get yourself up and running with the Windows subsystem for Linux and the brand spanking new Windows terminal. Trust me, you won't regret it. Let's get back to the video. Anyways, on the screen right now, all the commands you need in order to download Postgres. I'll have them in the description below as well, so you don't have to type them all out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's actually get started setting things up here. So first things first, what we actually need to do is go ahead and make some changes and some little tweaks to Postgres because it's not set up right for development straight away out of the box. We need to make a few little changes. Alright, so first things first, by default, when you download Postgres, it creates a new user on your system, and we need to set a password for that user. So we can do this by saying sudo pass wd, and then the name of the user, Postgres, and if we hit enter, we can type in a password for that user, retype it in. Oh, for goodness gracious sake. And password updated successfully. Alright, cool. So the next thing we need to do is actually start the Postgres server. We can do this by typing service postgresql start. And we need to add the sudo keyword at the start of that, sorry. So that should go ahead and start the database server. Now the next thing we need to do is actually go into the Postgres shell and we just make a few little tweaks, just a few last tweaks, alright? Now the way we actually go into the Postgres shell is by typing in sudo -u postgres and then psql, okay? And as you see, we're in the shell. So now what we need to do is we need to change the password for the Postgres user again. This password is going to be the one that we actually use to connect to the database from the program. And then we also need to create the database that we're going to use for today's video. So the way we change the password is we can type alter user, name of the user, Postgres. We need what we're going to change, the password, and then we need the new password in some quotes. For this tutorial, it's just going to be ABC123. Obviously, guys, if you're actually going to, make an actual project, you probably want a password a little bit more secure than just ABC123, alright? And guys, I've just made a classic mistake. At the end of this line, you need to make sure that you have a semicolon. If you don't, it'll run over to the next line. No biggie, just type in a semicolon, hit enter. You should see alter role be printed out to the console, everything's good. Alright, so the next thing is we need to create the database. It's really simple. Just type in create database, name of the database. I'm going to call my database bookkeeper. Semicolon at the end of the line. Hit enter, that should go ahead and create the database, and we're all set. Now what we need to do is type in /q, press enter, and we're out of the shell. Alright, so now we're actually ready to start doing a little bit of coding. So what you need to do firstly is go to your Go path or your Go workspace, and I'm basically going to make a new directory. I'm going to call it bookkeeper, and then I'm going to cd into that directory. So now what we can do is open this up in your favorite code editor. Visual Studio Code is what I'll be using today because it's close to my heart. Visual Studio Code, it's very close to my heart. Alright, so first thing is first. We need a package. We need to declare the package main. So with this app, we're going to have some users, and each user is going to be able to have like a bunch of books that are assigned to them. If you can think about a library, people can take out books and, you know, that book will be associated with that person. So first things first, we need to talk about models in databases. So we can think about models as a way of describing an entity. What is an entity? Well, it can be pretty much anything. Let me give you an example. If we're making an app that needed user accounts, we would probably build a model to describe all of the different attributes of a user. For example, we probably want a user to have a username, an email, a password, and an age. Now, for each of these attributes, we would need to assign a type. So the username would be a string, for example. An email could be a regular string, but you'd probably build your own email struct to represent exactly how that string should be structured. A password. Now, a password is always a special type of string that's handled differently across different sort of technologies, which is beyond the scope of this tutorial. And then we have an age, which could just be an integer. Now, finally, models can have relations with other models. So in this app that we're building today, we will have a user that has a one-to-many relationship with some books. Now, there is another type of relationship called one-to-many, which is sort of like for one phone, there can only be one phone number. Alright, so now that's cleared up, let's get back into the code. Alright, so now that we talked about that, we can go ahead and say type person struct. So in a database model, or in a struct that we're going to use as a database model, we would need a few things to be declared first. So we would need stuff like a unique ID. We would need date deleted, date created, and date updated. Now, if we were to put that in the struct, it would make everything really cluttered, and we would have to like put out a bunch of sort of like almost redundant information in every single struct, and it would get really bloated, and there's no real point to doing that. So thank goodness, Jinzu, the guy who made GORM, made something called gorm.model, and go ahead and import GORM here. And basically what this will do is we'll insert stuff like the unique ID, the date created, the date update, and the date deleted automatically, and it's just one line of code instead of 3-4 lines of code that's taking up all the space in our struct. So that's pretty cool. The next thing we need to do for the person is every single person should have a name, which is going to be a string. The rest of this is pretty much just like a normal struct. Email, string. Obviously, if you were actually building out this app, you probably wouldn't just have it as a regular string, but I'm going to have it as that for now. And we're going to have books. Now, books is going to be an array of type book. We're going to create that in just a minute. Now, email, I want this to be unique. I want every single person to only be able to have one email. Like only one email for every person can exist in the database. So if two persons try to use the same email, there'll be an error. Now, the way that we can do that is we need to use backticks, and we can say GORM. And we want to say quotes type. Now the type is going to be a varchar type varchar 100. Basically, this is saying that we don't want the email to be over 100 characters, and we need a semicolon in there with no spaces. We want unique underscore index. Unique index is what will actually make sure that there's only one of these that exists in the database. Okay, so now we need to make this book struct. So we can come down here and say type book struct. And for a book, obviously this is also going to be a gorm.model. Okay, we're going to have a title, which is a string. We're going to have a author, which is a string. We're going to have a call number. Call number is basically like the number that we would use to identify the book if it was a real library. So this is going to be an integer. Be careful that if you're using integers, make sure that if the numbers are too big to be computed by Golang. So for example, if I came down here and said var num equals you see, it's too big of a number to be used in the program. So if your call numbers are this long, make sure that you store them as strings and not numbers. But anyway, that's sort of redundant information. Then we have a person ID. Now, because we're going to have a relationship between a book and a person, we want to make sure that we know which person each book is assigned to, and that's what person ID is going to be. Now, notice that you have to put the name of this struct here and then put ID afterwards. That's sort of just how GORM works. So if you want to have a relationship, you sort of have to use the name of the struct and then something after it. So this is going to be an integer. And yeah, I also want the call number to be unique for each book. So I'm just going to say unique index for each call number. Okay, cool. So now we can go ahead and start writing up our main function. So func main. So the first thing we need to do when we talk about databases is we need a database connection string. Now this is going to have all of the information that our app needs to gain access to the database, right? Now it's unsafe to store this stuff in your code, especially if you're pushing it up to GitHub. Pushing stuff up to GitHub, obviously people can abuse that sort of data and they can access your database from, whichever server they want. So make sure that you're not storing this type of sensitive information in the regular code. We need to store it using environment variables, which if we were pushing up to GitHub, we would put in a .gitignore file. Now the way we can do this is by coming here and type in .env. All right, and I'll show you all the information that we need to put in this file real quick. Let me just pull it up here. All right, so what do we need in this file? So we want a dialect. So the dialect is going to be Postgres. It's basically like the type of database we're using. Then we're going to have a host, which for now is just going to be local host because we're in development. Then we want the database port. This is going to be, by default, it should be 5432. You might have to double check, but if you've installed it the way I showed you in the video at the start, it should work just fine. So then we have user. The user is going to be the default Postgres. Then we need a name, so the database name. This is going to be bookkeeper, the one that we created earlier in the video. Then we need a password. Password is ABC123. And that should be everything. All right, cool. So I'm not going to be using go.env because I've encountered some problems with go.env for some reason. There seems to be some authentication issues with it. In Visual Studio Code, you can just press Control, Alt, and down arrow to select multiple lines. We're just going to type export here. This is basically going to let us sort of, from the terminal, we can set these environment variables instead of using go.env. Okay, so in the main function, we need to go ahead and get all of those environment variables. So let's go and do that. So I'll just say getting, or loading is probably that word. Loading environment variables. I've probably spelled that wrong, haven't I? Yeah. Environment variables. Jesus Christ. Okay, so the first thing we need is a dialect. Dialect is going to be, what is it going to be? It's going to be os.getEnv dialect. Okay. Basically, just paste this a bunch of times. So then we need the host, which is going to be the host. Then we need the DB port, which is going to be the database port. Is that what it was? Yeah, DB port. So then after that, we need the user, which is user. Then we will need the DB name, which is going to be the DB name. Oh, sorry, just the name. All caps. What am I doing? Name. Then finally, we will need the password, which we stored as password. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is go ahead and actually create the database connection string, which we can do under here. So database database connection string. There we go. So typically database connection string is called the DB URI. That's typically like what it's called usually. So that is going to be fmt.sprintf, like so. Okay, so 1 minute, mon ami. Let me just have a look at my laptop so I can see what I'm doing. Huh? So you have host. We have a user. We have a DB name, of course. Then we have SSL mode, which I'm just gonna disable it because it's a bit useless for development. Then we have password. Then we have port. Okay, and then after this, you can just go ahead and put everything in there. So we want host, user. Then we want DB name. Then what do we want? We want password. Then we want DB port. Is that everything? Dialect. Oh shoot, we're gonna use that in a minute, not just now. Also up here, go ahead and install FMT or import FMT and the OS package from the top. So we're gonna be using this in a minute. So what we need to do now is it's gonna make it a lot easier if we declare a few variables globally. So var db is gonna be pointed to gorm.db. Okay, and we need to also create a variable for errors. Error, there we go. Make sure you declare both of these as global because I've encountered some issues if you don't do that, and it's just incredibly frustrating. All right, so down here we need to go ahead and open the connection to the database. So opening, is that how you spell opening? 2 P's? No, it's not 2 P's. Opening connection to database. Okay, cool. So down here what we need to do is basically just say db error equals gorm.open. We're gonna have the dialect and the db URI. Okay, so that will basically open up the connection to the database. So we need to do some error handling quickly. So we want to say if error is not equal to nil, log.fatal error. Of course, make sure you import the logs package for that to work smoothly. And if that is successful, fmt.println successfully connected to database. Hey, lovely jubbly. Okay, so next thing we need to do is if the database is not in use and the application is not running, we want to make sure we close the connection to the database because there are a few select situations where stuff can go wrong if the connection is still open. So what we want to do is basically say we want to close connection to database when the main function finishes. There we go. The way we can do that is using the defer keyword. So the defer keyword, of course, it will basically say do this after the function that is currently running has finished. So we want to say db.close. Basically what it's saying is go ahead and close our connection to the database after the main function has stopped running. Now, you don't have to worry about it closing abruptly because we're going to have a web server running, and a web server will continuously run until you close the app. So after the web server stops running, you'll just make sure to close the connection, which is good. Okay, so next thing is for now what we need to do is do some database migrations. If you don't know what database migrations are, it's basically stamping these structs into the database. So we can't create a person or a book if the database doesn't know how to create them. A migration is basically going to say, all right, look, if you ever get a request to create or update or delete a person, all you need to do is if you just make sure you get the name. A person should have a name, an email, some books. This will make sure that they already have an ID, a date created, blah, blah, blah. It's basically telling the database, okay, listen, a book has these attributes. Please make sure that that's how they look in the database, basically. So we're going to make migrations to the database. Now, migrations only need to be made once, and then you don't need to do them again. So GORM will only do this if they have not already been created. The way we can do this is super easy. It's just db.automigrate, and then we can put in here a struct, so person, and it can just be an empty person struct. So we can go ahead and create a second one for a book as well. Okay, cool. So now that's actually pretty much it. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save it. So what this should do is make some migrations to the database, and if the connection is successful, it should print successfully connected to database. So I'm going to go ahead and really quickly test this out, because I might be, you never know about these things. Also, before we run this, because we're not using go.env, we have to do source.env in the terminal, and that will set all the environment variables. And then we have to do go run main.go, and that should print out, hopefully, connection successful, unknown driver, Postgres. Okay, that's correct. Sorry, guys. May not have forgot about this. We need to do an underscore here, all right? And then we need to do github.com/jinzu/gorm/dialects/postgres. So basically what this means is we're not going to be using this directly in the code, but we will use some of the middleware. If I type this in correctly, shoot, hold on, give me one sec here. What did I do for go get? What is it? Dialects/Postgres. Let me just grab this and I'll paste that in there. Okay, there we go. So github.com/jinzu/gorm/dialect/postgres. Make sure we put an underscore at the start, because we're not going to be using it in the code, but we will need some of the middleware associated with this package. And that's basically what this underscore means. So now we need to go down here, save it, and we can go ahead and try run it. Can I just exit that? There we go, cool. So we need to go run main.go. Hey, successfully connected to database. There we go. I don't know. All right, whatever. But it's working for me. So if it's not working for you, just have a quick look at the code again. Make sure you've not got any spelling errors. Make sure these are global variables. Make sure that you typed source.env in your terminal session before you run the program. And other than that, I don't really know. If you've got any problems at this point, make sure you put them down in the comments below. I'll probably reply to you within the hour. I'll try to. So without further ado, let's get into the next part. So now we've pretty much got everything working. So if we want to create something, I think what we should do first is try and create some stuff in the database just normally using regular code before we transcribe it to an API, because the API part is really repetitive, to be honest. It's just a lot of the same code. It's really boring. So I just want to make sure this is working the way it should be first. So at the top here, let's create some, actually above these, below these, above these. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. I'll do this above. So we are going to have a variable called people, which is going to be an array of people. We're just going to create one person. So a person, uno minuto. All right, here we go. So what we want is, we want a name. So name Jack. Why not? It's just my name, innit? It's just my name. Email Jack at email.com. and we want, we don't actually need to declare books here at all. We don't need to have it here in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so then let's create books. So we want this to be an array of type book. Yeah, I think so. Why not? So in here, so I don't know, random stuff, right? Title. I don't know. I don't read books. Let me look up and find the book. Why not? The rules of thinking. The author of, oh God's sake. This is so frustrating. I can't type. I need to learn how to touch type. I don't know how to do that yet. The book was written by Richard Templar. Alright, then the call number, some random 1, 2, 3, 4, why not? And then the person ID. Now, because this is the first, because, you know, we're going to make one person in the database, this person I can tell is going to have the ID of 1 because it always starts at 1 and it's the first person in the database. So we'll set that as 1. Okay, I spelled title wrong, of course. And I'll basically just create 2. And the rules of, I don't know. Do you know what? I'm just going to call it book 2. Author 2, you know. Call number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, person ID 1. Okay, so we've got some people doing some books. We want to basically, we want to put that in the database. We want to store it in the database. So the way that we can do that, my friends, let me just take another look at my laptop. All right, so what we need to do to create a person, we can just do db.create, and then we can go ahead and say, we want to say end, oh God's sake, end person, right? So db.create end person, what's going on? Oh, people. Why did I call it people? What am I doing? All right, anyway, so there we go. Now, because this is an array, we basically want to do for index to equal range books. We basically want to do db dot create books index. There we go. All right, fantastic work, lads. Let's go. Pretty sure we don't actually need that there. For now, we don't need that. Okay. So, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, so we will need it here, though. All right, we will need it here. I'll touch on this later, but you know, pointers in Go are still blow my mind. I'm just trying to think of how to do it. Okay, so let's try and run this and see if it works. I actually don't even know if it will work, to be honest. Half the time, that's just, it could work. It could also not work. You know, it is what it is. And let's see if it works. Ooh, it looks like it works. I feel like it worked. Let's open up a new tab and let's see what's going on. So let's go ahead and say sudo -u. Let me make this bigger for you lot. Basically going to go back into Postgres PSQL. Okay, type in your password. Okay, so we're back here. Now what we need to do is we want to see if we've created anything in the database, right? So you can list out all of the different databases you created with -l or /l, and you can see you've got bookkeeper. I've got some other databases here. You can press Q to get out of it. Now we need to select bookkeeper as the database that we're currently focusing on. So we can do that by typing in /c and then book_keeper. All right, hit enter. And we're now connected to the bookkeeper as user Postgres. Okay, so what we need to do to see basically all the information is we can quickly just type /dt. That will show us all of like the migrations or the relationships in the table. Now we want to see if we've created a user. Way we can do that is all caps select. Select. Is it? I think it's, you can just type it in like people. Select people from, sorry, not select people from, I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. We want to select all, or asterisk or star, whatever, from people. We want to select all of the people, basically. Make sure you have a semicolon at the end of the line, and you can see it worked. We have a Jack and we have the email here. That's pretty cool. All right, so we want to see if the books were created as well. We can do the same thing from, we get all the books, semicolon, boom, here we go. So you can do the date created. I'm assuming that's the date created, or whatever. You got the Rules of Thinking by Richard Templar, and then we've got book 2, author 2. Yeah, so everything's working good. All right, so everything is actually being stored in the database, which is pretty cool. Again, \Q to exit, and I'm gonna go ahead and close this tab down. All right, so let's get back to work. So now that we know this is working, we can basically work on getting the API up and running. Now the API is probably the most repetitive part of this tutorial, so I beg and I urge you, please try and stay focused for this part, because it is very repetitive. There's a lot of different controllers and handlers and this and that, and it just gets really, really frustrating. Let's have a look at the list of imports we got now. Nothing's really changed. All right, I'm just trying to make sure, because I've got the Go extension installed, which automatically does that for you. Sometimes I forget. Okay. So let's go ahead and start off by making all the different routes for our API. So API routes. All right, so router is equal to mux.new router. Now make sure you've got Gorilla Mux imported, and we can go back down here, and let's just say router dot handle func. We want to handle / let's start off by getting all of the people. All right, pull, and then we want to say get people. All right, and we want to make sure that you can only send a get request. So if you go to this, you can only get people. You can't send post requests and this and that, just to make sure that no one tries any funky business trying to delete people from your get people route. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly code this one up first. I'm just going to code one up first, and then we can basically copy and paste all the code for everything else. So get people, make sure you have W and R. So W is a http.response writer, and R is a pointer to http.request. And then in here, get people, we basically want to get a variable. So people, your pool is going to be, what's it going to be, my friend? It's going to be an array of persons, whatever. Basically we're going to do db.find, and we're going to say we want to find some people. All right, so basically what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, we have a variable. This variable is of type array of people. So go into the database and find an array of people, all of the people, right? So that's what find does. It basically finds all of them, all of the models that fit this struct, and it returns them. And because we have it in an array, it will basically return all of them. Okay, so then we want to send this data back in JSON. So we say json.new encoder w in that bracket, and then .encode, and then we want to encode the people and send that back. This needs to be a pointer to the people. Okay, so we're good. So now what we need to do is basically go ahead and test. So now what we need to do is basically import some stuff. So you will need to get encoding/JSON installed, and you will also need net/http. Now we need to start up our server. So next thing we need to do is http.listen and serve 8080, and we're gonna pass in the router like so. Save that, and let's go run it. Main.go. Alright, so we're looking good. Let's go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to be using Postman. Alright, so now the Postman's loaded, let's go ahead and create a new workspace. So we want to test out localhost port 8080/people. Okay, and then we want to go get request. Yeah, we're good. So we can just send it, and boom, we get back the JSON for this person. Now notice how books is null. We would have to do a little bit more work to get that working. I'm not going to do it in like this. I'm gonna say it so that whenever you want to get a specific person, that is when you'll get the array of books back. But you'll be able to change that if you want to. It's very easy to change. Okay. So let's go back. Now let me know this is working. And we can go ahead and basically implement everything else we need. So here I'm just going to say API controllers. Okay. Alright, so here we want to be able to get a single handler func. We want to be able to get a single person. Now if we want to get a single person, we're going to need to have the ID of that person. Not necessarily just the ID, but it's the easiest thing to get to use, right? So we can go ahead and say basically what will happen is someone will type in person and then slash and then a number, and that number will be stored as the ID in memory. Alright, that's kind of how that works. If you've not seen it before, don't worry, it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to get behind. So say get person, and again this is going to be a get request route. So then we want func get person, scroll down a bit. This is also going to take in WNR, and we basically, first thing we need to do is say params. So params mux.vars, and we want to grab, so just pass an R there, so that's going to read the request head. So that's basically how we're going to get our ID. It's going to be stored in this params array. This is actually an array. So it's going to be stored in this params variable anyway. So after that, what we need to do is we want to be able to find one person, right? So we need to declare a variable for a person struct. So person is going to be the type person. All right, and then here, what I want to do is say db.first. Okay, db.first is basically, it will only ever find the first person with the query you give it. So in this case, I want to find the first person with whichever ID was passed into the URL. So I'll say we want a pointer to person, and we want the ID, so we can get the ID from the URL by saying params and then ID, like so. Okay, and that should work like a charm. So after that, we can go ahead and send that back through JSON. So JSON.newEncoder w.encode person. Okay, and yeah, so that should work. So we should only be able to get one person. Now when I get one person, I want to get and all of their books as well. So not just the person, I want to be able to get the person and all of the books associated with them. So the way we're going to do that is we need to declare another variable here. So books, there's an array of type book. Then down here, what I want to do is say database.model. Okay, and then we want to get person dot related, and I want to get all of the related books. Okay, so this is basically going to take a look at the specific person, and it's going to get all of the books that are associated with that person. Okay, so then what we need to do lastly is say person dot books, and we're going to set it equal to books. Okay, and then we can go ahead and send that back through JSON. Okay, so now what we can do is test this out quickly. So we can go ahead and start the server again first before we set that out. Main. So we can go ahead and start the server again, and we can go ahead and get person, and we'll just get the first person. So now you can see we've got the first person just like before, but now we've also got the books associated with that person. And as you can see, there's 2 books associated with that person. Okay, so now what do we need to do? So we can get people, we need to be able to create a person, and we need to be able to delete a person as well, right? So in order to do that, we can say func create person. It's going to take in W and R just like before. And for this one, we're going to do the exact same things as we've done before pretty much. So person is going to be a person. We're going to basically, the way this is going to work is someone or an outside source is going to have to send some JSON. We're going to turn that JSON into a person struct. And then we'll create that struct in the database. Okay. Now the way we can decode some JSON is JSON.new decoder. Take in not W, r.body. Okay. R.body is basically all of the JSON data that's being sent in. Okay. So then we need to go ahead and decode it, and then we need to go ahead and decode it into this person variable here. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is we need to say created person is going to equal db.create person. Okay, so now what we can do is we can say error is equal to created person dot error, like so. And we just need to do some basic error handling quickly. So if error is not equal to nil, JSON dot new encoder w dot encode. There's going to be error. So we'll basically send back an error instead of the created person. Okay. Otherwise, if everything is successful, we grab this, and instead of sending back the error, we'll just go ahead and send back the person. Okay. So that's good. That's cool. That is fantastic work. So what we need to do at this point is go ahead and, should we test it out? I think we should test it out, right? So I'm pretty sure this should work. I don't see why this wouldn't work. You can see there's some errors here. I'll handle that in a bit, alright? But I'm not really concerned right now. So in the router, we can say router.handle func, and I want to have this at /create /person. Okay, and then we'll just have the create person. This one, since we're creating something, is not match. What's going on? What's going on here? What's going on? Because we're creating something, this is going to be a post request. We're going to post something to the database. Okay, save that bad boy. Calm on. Let's go back to the postman, and let's go ahead and just. First of all, I need to start the server. I'm getting ahead of myself, guys. I'm really excited. I'm really excited. Alright, so and then we can go to create /person. Okay, now if we click on body, we need to go ahead and create a request. So a user is gonna have a name. That name is gonna be I don't know. We're gonna create, why not? Why not? Just why not? You know what I mean? Name Elon Musk. We're gonna have a what was it? Is this name and email, right? So email is elon@email.com. Okay, so we go ahead and send that. I think that should work. Method not allowed. That is because we have to make it a post request. Send that. Boom. Here we go. So we got an ID of 2. Created that. Blah blah blah. So now if I just show you, if I actually send this again, we should get, there we go, severity error code. Yeah. So basically duplicate key. That's because we have the same email. So that's working good as well. Okay. So that's pretty good. That's working exactly how I was hoping for it to work, which is shocking. To be quite frank with you, you won't believe how many takes these videos take. It, like, stuff always comes up, I'm telling you. So now the last thing we need to do is be able to delete a user. So we want to delete person, WR, and just like that. But we want to say, if we want to delete someone, we're going to have an ID in the URL again, just like for getting one person, we need to know who we're going to delete. Right, so we want to do the same thing as before. So params is mux.vars, okay, and just put an r there. All right, and then we need to come down here, and we need to we need to go ahead and create another person. So person is type person, okay, and then what I need to do, my friend, is give me a second to think. All right, my brains are melting right now. Jesus Louises. So first of all, we need to get all of the information from this person in the database. It's the best way to do it, right? It's the safest way to do it. So we can do db.first again. We need to get one specific user, right? And if we can't, there's nothing to delete, right? So that's basically how this works. We look for the user. If you can't find him, send back, an error, or this will print an error to the console. Actually, I don't think it will do anything, to be fair. I don't think it actually does anything. I think it just, the delete request just won't happen. We basically need to make sure that there is someone in the database that has these credentials or this ID. So then, once we find that person, sadly, they will have to be deleted from the database. All right, and then we can go ahead and send back a JSON.newEncoder, w.encode, and that will be person. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic work. All right, so yeah, that's actually pretty much it. The only thing left to do would be to update a user. I'm gonna leave that up to you as the viewer, as a task to the viewer. So I'm going to go ahead and test this, and if it works, we'll just quickly go through everything we need to do. We need to create a route for this first. So router.handle func/delete/person, and then we need to have an ID in there. And then we'll just say delete person. And then we can only send delete methods to this. So after this, we'll just go ahead and work on being able to create, delete, and get books. And then I think that's pretty much it. Duplicate. Oh yeah, so this is because we sent that Elon Musk thing twice, so it prints it out to the console as well. All right, so let's restart the server. All right, cool. Let's go back to Postman. And I'll go ahead and say I want to delete a person /2. Elon Musk is number 2. If I send the delete request to that, send that. So we get back this the JSON of the user. Then we can go back to people, pull, and you'll be able to see. Yeah, so Elon Musk is not here. He's not here anymore. He's vanished. He's passed away, sadly. He doesn't exist in my database anymore. Okay. So now we've done everything we need for the people. We just need to work on the books, which is basically, it's pretty much the same stuff, right? This is what I was talking about. This stuff does get really, really repetitive, but it has to be done, So slash books, get books dot methods, get I can basically just copy and paste this, to be honest with you. Book, change that to capital, get rid of that S there. Okay, and then we need to go ahead and we also need an ID for this one, sorry. Alright, so we need an ID there, and then we need to be able to create books, so book. So there we go, create book, and then we want to be able to delete a book as well. So book and book. There we go. So that's all the routes we need. Let's go ahead and create all that stuff. So this will be people controllers, and down here we're going to need to create the book controllers. Okay. Whew. All right, so let's say we want to be able to get the books, all the books, every single book that's in the database. So to do that, we need books, array of book. Then what do we need to do? Let me have a look up here. We need to find, I'll just copy and paste this, to be honest. So we need to find them and send them via JSON. So books, there we go. Then we need a function called get book singular. All right, and then in here we need to basically grab the ID from the URL. Okay, then I'll just create a variable book is a book. Then we need to do db.first book params ID. Then we can go ahead and send that, not a decoder, encoder. There we go. Encode, and we want to encode the book. Okay, so that's get a singular book. Then we need to be able to create a book, and I'm going to copy and paste because I can't be bothered to keep typing. So create book. So control book. We want to change all of these to caps. There we go. So then we need to be able to delete a book as well. Last one, guys, come on, we almost made it. Book, grab all of those and change that to book, capitalize that, and that should be it. Okay, yeah, so like as you guys tell, like this last bit, controllers are not fun to write. Okay, they're not fun at all. They're probably the most annoying part, actually, of the whole Go server development stuff, right? They're just really frustrating. Okay, oh shoot, we should probably log.fatal the server, guys. I always do this. I don't know why I didn't do this at the start. So yeah, let's go ahead and test it and make sure it's working, because it could possibly not be working. You know, you never know. Successfully connected to database. Okay, let's go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create some people. So I'm going to create another person. So create person. I'm going to send a post request. It's going to be called, you know what, person free, right? person@email.com, send that request, and there we go. So we've got person number 3. Then I want to basically create, instead of a person, I want to create a book. So a book is going to have, of course, it's going to have a title, whatever title you want to call this book. I'm just going to call it book 3. Then we need an author, which is going to be author 3. Then we need a call number, which is going to be a number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we need, I think this is finally a person ID, which is 4, right? Yeah, because the one we just created is 4. So there we go. So that's pretty much it. So let's send this and I hope it works. I hope this works. I really hope this works. Hey, okay. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and get all the books. You can see we've got a bunch of books here, and then if I want to get all the people, send that request. You see we've got all the people that currently exist, which is only 2 people. Then I can get a singular person, like so. So I want to get the person with ID number 4. You see we've got this geezer. So we've got person 3. We got their books, so they only have 1 book, and that book is called book 3, and it has an author 3, call number, person ID. Okay, we can go ahead and delete this book, so we can go ahead and /delete this book. So delete book. What ID was it? It was an ID of 3. So I can go ahead and delete this book, send that request. We can see it came back with this JSON object, so that means deleted. I can send a request for person 4 again, and you can see now they don't have a book, it's just an empty array. Okay guys, that was it for this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching, really appreciate it. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.